What happens when light connects people? For the International Day of Light, Sharon Stammers and Martin Lupton joined Light and Light Academy as special guests. Through Light Collective, they explored light art, creative installations, and experimental collaborations. Discover how light can bring people, ideas, and experiences together.
Thank you for having us.
The stage is yours, actually.
I'll share our screen, Sharon, if you want to kick off.
Okay, so we thought we'd just briefly talk through our journey in lighting, our unconventional journey, as to how we started Light Collective and a little bit about our backgrounds. So Light Collective is a company that's based in the UK with myself and Martin. We are in two different locations. I'm in London, he's in Birmingham. So we've never had an office. And very, very recently, we added Magali Mendez in Mexico City to Light Collective. We've worked together for around 15 years. And we'll tell you a little bit more about the company itself in a minute. But first off, how did we get to be Light Collective? So, Martin.
Okay, that's a good question, a good place to start. So, how I started was at school. I was very much a science-based student. My final exams were maths and physics and computer science. The artistic things that I was involved with were basically just a hobby. I always thought I was quite a creative person, but I was very academically focused on science and the sciences at school. And this led me to a degree in environmental engineering. Pipes and wires were the focus of that. It was heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. And it was about creating spaces for people, looking at all of these different systems and how they worked inside a building. That's like air conditioning, heating, electrical systems, acoustics. And one small part of this was lighting. When I finished my degree, which I did at Liverpool School of Architecture, it was quite a creative place. I was very lucky to be offered the chance to undertake a PhD in lighting. So this was 3 years of my life where it was very, very focused on lighting. I was looking at a very small and specific element of lighting, with lots of sort of experimentation, lots of research, lots of sort of going out and seeing what else was happening in that area in the world. But it also gave me a chance to realize that lighting and lighting design was actually a career in its own right. I don't think I really knew that at the time before I did this. And I also realized that it was a design-focused and creative career. And ultimately, this led me to the conclusion that lighting design was actually the perfect balance of science and art. I realized that lighting was a visual medium. And out of all these other environmental elements that I mentioned that I did on my degree, it was the only environmental element that people responded to when you got it right. So let me explain that a little bit, I guess. So if you've got air conditioning or heating, people notice it when it's wrong. It's too cold, it's too hot. When it's right, it fades into the background and it just becomes an element of the environment you're in. You don't actually notice it. It's just right. So lighting was like that too. It could be noticed when it was negative, but it also had the ability to be high impact, to be noticed when it was right. It can be dramatic, it can be guiding, calm, warm, cold, energizing. And this is sort of what started to appeal to me about lighting. It was a visual science. It made a positive and noticeable impact. So when I finished my PhD back in 1996, I went straight into architectural lighting design. I worked in a small independent practice in the UK, because at that time, all the practices were pretty small. There was 5 of us in the whole practice. Very much, there was maybe 5 or 6 total practices in the UK at that time. Very small industry. I worked there for a while, and then in 2008, I moved to an incredibly large company that had maybe 1,500 people globally. It was an architecture-led, multidisciplinary design practice, and I was there to lead the lighting design specialism within that. So I would work with architects, landscape architects, structural engineers, mechanical and electrical engineers. And I built a team of about 30 different lighting designers at its peak in 4 different offices. And we worked on a variety of sectors, but we had a lot of focus at the time on retail, urban regeneration, commercial offices, museums. And one thing that we did a lot of at the time as well, which I think went on to shape a lot of the stuff we've done in the future, was that we did a lot of collaboration with artists. So working with artists in the public realm, where we helped them integrate light into their works. And so, so that's where I've came from, and that's where I got to before the start of Light Collective.
So my background is originally a degree in drama, where I ended up taking quite a few practical modules, including lighting. Moved back to London and started as a stage electrician on the stage. Didn't really know what I was doing. Had to sort of figure it out and learn my way through. I discovered somehow by accident that architectural lighting was a profession, and there were some companies out there. And I applied for a job at one as a junior and started work there alongside completing a Master's of Science in Architectural Lighting in London. And the company I worked for was quite similar to Martin's. We focused on a lot of heritage projects and theatrical projects, renovating theatres. And we were also lucky enough, which for me at the time I thought was beyond exciting, to work on a lot of projects that were happening overseas, in India and Egypt, and lots of exotic places to me at the time. So that's my journey.
So then I guess this is where Light Collective begins. But I think in a way it's fair to say Light Collective started before we called it Light Collective. Sharon and I first started working together for a thing called the Professional Lighting Designers Association. It doesn't exist anymore, but it was created as the European Lighting Designers Association. So it was essentially set up in Europe to not compete with the ILD, but to represent the European lighting designers, because the International Association of Lighting Designers at the time felt very US biased. And this organization began, it had grown for many years. And then I was, again, lucky enough to be elected president of the association. And at the time, Sharon joined as the UK coordinator. So with me being in the UK and Sharon running the UK side of the Professional Light Designers Association, we got to work together a lot. And in that process, we realized that we were really good at working together. We were very creative at coming up with ideas. We were quite good at causing trouble and making things happen. And so we both decided that we wanted to stop what we were doing and set up our own practice where we could really try and make a difference and talk a lot about light. And we set up Light Collective to work in 2 different ways. At the start, we had an element of commercial projects. So we did all of our commercial projects, which we felt fed our income, and they generated income, which enabled us to, alongside that, to do some more meaningful projects for the soul, I guess you could describe it as. And as Sharon said at the start, we had no office, we have no office. We also decided at that time that we didn't want to grow. So from the start, we wanted to be involved personally in everything that we were working on. So I think both of us had got to a point in our career where we were leading teams of individuals. And the more you do that, the further you get away from actually doing the thing that you were passionate about at the start. So we sort of, this was our reset moment, I guess, for that. So we could actually be involved, hands-on in everything that we did, every aspect of our work. And I guess that meant that we gave a sort of slightly different service to other people. But that said, when we set that up, it sounds a bit sort of free-flowing, but we did have a set of rules, didn't we, Sharon?
Yeah, we made ourselves 10 rules. We like to be sort of inspired by different things from outside of lighting. We're both fans of film. We both like to bring that into what we do. So, I mean, here's a rule: get a kick-ass partner. I mean, at the time, that felt like we were doing the right thing. Now we're older, I'm not sure we're as kick-ass as we were then. The 10 rules, I'm pleased to say, despite us really ever revisiting them, I think they're pretty much still standing. When I look at them now, I think that we're still doing the same things with what we do within the world of lighting and outside of it. We were also really inspired by a book which was about a software, which was about breaking a lot of rules in how to run a company. And don't have a slide for it, but there were a series of things that were sort of smashing up stuff we'd always done in the companies we'd worked for before. So things like having a timesheet, things, things about meetings and all the sort of traditional, conventional ways of running a company. And we decided to try and kind of turn a lot of those on its head. And I'm glad to say that we're still kind of doing that.
We hope so. So when we started, our very first project was sort of a challenge to ourselves to see if we could work together. We were invited by a fantastic light artist that we know, a guy called Nayan Kulkarni. He was working on, I think it was probably a year-long project in a place called Shetland. Now, Shetland is north of Scotland. It's possibly closer to Norway than it is to the UK. It's definitely closer to Norway than it is to England. It's a very, very remote island. And it's known for its incredible wind. It's very windy there because it's in the middle of the sea. It's very flat. There's literally no trees that grow there because it's so windy. And Nayan had come up with this artistic project. It was a community engagement project. So he got the local islanders to vote and nominate 15 different sites on the various islands that exist in Shetland. And each one of them was transformed with a temporary light installation for a week. And that light installation was designed by Nayan. He designed each one on the spot using wind-powered LED RGB fittings. And the colour schemes for the RGB fittings were dictated by films that the residents have taken. And so this was our first challenge, incredibly harsh environment. And it snowed and it was incredible. But then we came back and we made it successful. And so we were very happy with that. And we decided that we would be able to work together.
So that was kind of our first challenge as a company. And as Martin said, the whole idea was if we managed to make it through that, then maybe we could work together. I mean, anyone that knows us will know that we disagree on everything, So it's kind
Pretty
of
much.
it's kind of hilarious that we're still here 15 years on. Just really, like as Martin said, we did kick off doing a lot of commercial lighting design. Um, this is an image from a shopping centre in Kuwait. So we worked on some very large scale projects, and we worked on some very small scale projects around the world. Alongside that,
Oh,
again, as Martin said,
all right.
we use the rest of our time to do things that were a lot more community based. So small scale projects, working with communities, working with schools, working with young people, or ways to bring communities together using light. And that involved all kinds of different activities, from sort of joint art installations to guerrilla lighting in all different countries. And I would definitely say that that was way more fun than the commercial lighting design.
Absolutely. We also then sort of started to look at how we could use light as a marketing tool, I guess, in a way. And we started to help people talk about light to their communities. So we did a lot of projects at the start of Light Collective with a company called Staccato, who were very new to the market. They brought on some really cutting edge LED technology that really was market leading at the start, but they didn't know how to engage with lighting designers. So we did some really creative projects around their fittings and their product, their LED source. This first one that you can see is a color dinner. So it has 7 courses. Each course is a different color of the spectrum, and it helped people realize how good this light source was through the spectrum. We then sort of created lots of different ways of talking about, for them to talk about light, I should say. We created a comic book that talked about flicker and R9, the different color temperatures that they should look at, lots of different things to do with light. We had a party where the lights were fixed to balloons and people had to go and meet their color partner. So yeah, a lot of stuff we did over the years was basically having fun with light, working with different brands.
This is also a branding sort of opportunity for light. But one of the things we've always tried to do is to find opportunities for other people working in the lighting industry and to bring them into our projects or to involve them in some way, whether it's creatively or to showcase what they do. And this example was a film that we made about LEDs, asking whether LED was the perfect light. We knew it wasn't, but we wanted to sort of discuss whether or not that premise was true and why we'd all moved to using it and forsaken all of the other sources. We interviewed different designers around the world and we showed the film in different places. And this really led to all sorts of different sort of strands of discussion in different countries about light. We also then had a second stage. Martin's flicked on to that project where we were able to take a group of designers to Japan to look at what the perfect light was itself and to discuss that and to try and have a perfect light experience together. So they're just the sort of examples of that kind of thing of trying to work with the community and bring them into something we do.
One of the things that came out of that project that Sharon talked about is we realized that when we did our interviews around the world of 24 different lighting designers, we actually realized that only three of those 24 designers were female. And we were challenged on this. So we did then try and address that by creating the Women in Lighting project. And part of that, we realized also that women light artists are very underrepresented. So to try and address that, we created a book about women light artists. And then with the help of Former Lighting, we curated a collection of light art based on that. A couple of which you're seeing in this image here. But light art is one of our interests that we've always focused on. And I think one of the things we've shifted to as a company now is focusing on more of our own personal interests. So one of which is light art. We've curated exhibitions. Top left, bottom right, and bottom left are from an exhibition in Paris that we created many years ago called Play of Brilliance. And then the other two are from our Women Light Artists collection. So that's one of the things we've been focusing on.
I think now we're at a point where we are lucky enough to be able to concentrate on the things that really interest us. So as Martin said, light art is one, darkness and the preservation of darkness and teaching about how we look after and protect the night sky is another one. We run a workshop in Tuscany every year in a small village alongside Traverso Vighi, some Italian architects. And we're now running a workshop next week in Texas with VF Lighting along the same lines, where we're going to be in a dark sky reserve. And we're also looking to run one at the end of the year in Mexico with our colleague Magali.
One of the other things we're really interested in is disruption and the change that's happening in the industry. So how is artificial intelligence going to affect us? How is all the new technology that we've got going to affect the lighting industry? So we've created another event called Disruption. This has happened in London, Mexico, Madrid, again in Mexico, and later this year it's going to happen again in Guadalajara. And we try and create a series of conversations between people and the participants that come along to that event.
And as Martin mentioned earlier, creating communities. So Women in Lighting is a community that really we never expected to be so huge. It started very small and it's now in 80 different countries. So when we were just asked to give this little chat about our journey, we were asked to give a couple of tips, which is really hard when you've been in lighting for sort of 30 years. But here's a couple for what they're worth. The first one that we think is really important is connecting with the community. So by joining in on a webinar like this, you're already doing that. But by going to different events, by different conferences, anything you can do to connect with people in different countries and to make those connections is really important. That was that slide. That's a nice community slide.
And then the other thing we've done is we always think you should go out and seek inspiration. It's really important that you don't just sort of sit and wait for inspiration to find you. It's much better if you go out and look for it, visit beautiful places, and wherever you go, take time to look at the light that's around you and the people that are around you and talk to them about light.
And then lastly, break rules. I mean, challenge convention. This is an event we had to celebrate Holi, and everybody threw paint under an amazing light source, and that's probably won't ever happen again, one of its kind as an event. But yeah, rules are made to be broken. I think they're the three things that we picked as being the most important.
Yeah, I think the fourth one should always be on time with your presentation, and we've probably broken that rule by overrunning. But if you want to find us, these are the places that you can find us. We're on Instagram and LinkedIn a lot, and you can always email us, and we will always respond. Thank you very much.